The filthy and cruel reality of Napoleon's empire. You do not wake up to the sound of trumpets or the cheers of a victorious nation. You wake up to the scratching. It is 1812, and you are deep within the Russian winter. Your skin is on fire, not from the heat of battle, but from the relentless, maddening itch of scabies. Under your pristine white uniform, the one the world sees in the paintings, your flesh is a map of red welts and weeping sores. The air in your tent is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, wet wool, and the metallic tang of old blood. There is no perfume from Paris here. There is only the damp, suffocating odor of men dying in the dark. You are Napoleon Bonaparte, the master of Europe, the man who redistributed the borders of the world with the stroke of a pen. But as you sit on your camp bed, your body is failing you. Your hemorrhoids make it impossible to sit on your horse without white-hot needles of pain shooting up your spine. You are a god to your soldiers, but to the lice living in your collar, you are just another source of warmth and blood. Forget the marble statues. Forget the golden eagles. This is the reality of the Napoleonic Wars. A world of gangrene, frozen limbs, and the desperate, primal scream of a horse being butchered for its raw, steaming meat. Walk through the camp of the Grande Armée. In the movies, you see rows of perfect tents and gleaming bayonets. The reality is a sea of mud and human excrement. Dysentery is a more lethal enemy than the Russian Cossacks. Imagine thousands of men living in close quarters, sharing the same water source that they also use as a latrine. You, the common soldier, haven't changed your shirt in 3 months. The fabric has practically fused with your skin through a mixture of sweat, dirt, and dried blood. Your feet are a disaster. Standard-issue boots are made of cheap leather that shrinks and cracks in the cold. You stuff them with straw and rags, but the dampness always finds a way in. This is the beginning of trench foot, a slow, agonizing rot where the skin turns black and peels off in wet chunks, exposing the bone. Why did they live like this? Because the logistics of the 19th century were medieval. There were no canned goods, no refrigeration, and no understanding of germs. Food was whatever you could pillage from a starving village. You eat soup made of moldy hardtack and whatever weeds you can find. If you are lucky, you find a dead cow. If you are desperate, you wait for a horse to collapse and cut a piece of its flank while it is still breathing, because the heat of the animal is the only thing that keeps your hands from freezing solid. Let's talk about the skin. In the 1800s, skin diseases were an inescapable part of life. Scabies, a tiny mite that tunnels under your skin to lay its eggs, was rampant in Napoleon's army. The emperor himself suffered from it for years. Imagine the constant, agonizing need to scratch, even during a diplomatic meeting or a tactical briefing. Your fingernails are black with dirt, and every time you scratch, you introduce bacteria into the open wounds, leading to staph infections and abscesses. Then there are the lice. Body lice live in the seams of your clothes. They are the primary carriers of typhus, the silent killer of the Russian campaign. You feel them crawling over your chest at night. There is no hot water to kill them. There is no chemical treatment. Soldiers would spend their rare moments of rest huddled around a fire, not just for warmth, but to hold their shirts over the flames, to hear the satisfying pop of the lice eggs exploding. This was their only victory. In the modern world, you have hot showers and antimicrobial soap. You have creams that kill parasites in a single application. For Napoleon and his men, the itch was a life sentence. It was a constant reminder that no matter how many kingdoms you conquered, you were still just an animal being eaten alive by smaller animals. The march through Russia is not a parade. It is a death march. The dust in the summer is so thick, you can't see the man in front of you. It enters your nose and throat, mixing with your saliva to create a thick, black paste that makes every breath a struggle. There is no water. You drink from puddles filled with horse urine. You are constantly dehydrated, your tongue swollen, and your lips cracked and bleeding. Then the winter hits. The temperature drops to -30 degrees Celsius. In these conditions, metal becomes a weapon against you. If you touch your musket barrel with a bare hand, your skin freezes to the iron instantly. When you pull away, you leave a layer of your palm behind. Men die while walking. They don't fall over dramatically. They simply stop, their brains clouded by hypothermia, and sit down in the snow. Within minutes, they are statues. The survivors don't stop to help. They strip the clothes off the warm corpse before the fabric freezes to the body. This is the visceral realism of empire. The greatest army in history reduced to ghosts, stealing boots from their brothers to survive one more hour of the biting wind. Napoleon was not the man of iron the propaganda claimed. By 1815, at the Battle of Waterloo, he was a physical wreck. He suffered from chronic bladder infections and an agonizing case of hemorrhoids. Think about the stakes. The fate of the world is being decided on a muddy field in Belgium. Napoleon needs to be in the saddle, directing his troops, showing the legendary energy that made him famous. Instead, he is trapped in his chair, unable to ride for more than a few minutes without excruciating pain. He is drowsy from the opium-based painkillers of the time, his mind clouded when it needs to be sharpest. The master of war was defeated not just by Wellington and Blucher, but by his own failing body. The smell of his sick room, a mix of medicinal herbs, sweat, and the sour scent of an aging man's decay, is the true atmosphere of the end of an era. We often think of history as a series of grand ideas, but history is also dictated by the health of a single man's organ. If you were wounded on a Napoleonic battlefield, your chances were slim. The primary tool of the army surgeon was the saw. There were no anesthetics. You were given a leather strap to bite on and a glass of cheap brandy. Surgeons like Dominique Jean Larrey were fast. They could amputate a leg in under 2 minutes, but the tools were never cleaned. The surgeon would move from one patient to the next, his apron soaked in the blood of 100 men, his saw carrying the bacteria of every infection in the camp. If the shock didn't kill you, the hospital fever, what we now call sepsis, would. This is the visceral truth. More men died in the care of doctors than from the initial bullet. They died in overcrowded barns, lying on blood-soaked hay, surrounded by the screams of others and the hum of thousands of flies. There were no antibiotics. A simple scratch on the arm could lead to a slow, blackening rot that eventually claimed your life. Napoleon died on the remote island of St. Helena, likely from stomach cancer. His final years were spent in a damp, rat-infested house, obsessed with his own bowel movements and the petty arguments of his small staff. The man who once ruled from Moscow to Madrid ended his life in a room that smelled of mold and medicine. When we look at the Napoleonic era, we must look past the oil paintings. We must smell the smoke, the rot, and the unwashed wool. We must feel the itch of the scabies and the bite of the Russian frost. Napoleon's glory was built on the backs of millions of men who lived in conditions we wouldn't wish on a stray dog. It was a world of incredible intellectual progress and terrifying physical suffering. You live in a world where a simple pill can cure the infections that wiped out armies. You live in a world where you can wash the day's grime away with the turn of a handle. You have luxuries that Napoleon Bonaparte, at the height of his power, couldn't even imagine. History is not just a list of dates. It is the story of the human body's struggle to survive the world it created. Would you have survived a week in the Grande Armée, or would the cold and the hunger have claimed you before you even saw the enemy? If you want to see the real, raw side of history that the schools won't tell you, hit the like button and subscribe to Flesh and Glory. Our journey into the darkest corners of the human past has just begun.